welcome back to Ethics TV. It's Jonathan here. This is episode number 35 with Gidoomal, who is in my home country of the UK right now. I'm sure in a far colder climate than I'm in Australia.
Very mild here, very, very mild.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's like 24 degrees, 23 degrees.
What?
It is absolute a heat wave going on. And that'll be for the next 2 weeks.
So I should quickly get over there then. So, so the first question, and anyone who watches this knows that I only have one set question. And my question is, what's keeping you busy? What's keeping you excited? And what's getting you motivated right now? What are you doing?
Well, there are a few things that are keeping me busy at the moment in parallel. One of them is a company that a board I've just joined. Because of my passion for cross-cultural music. When I heard about this group and they approached me and they stated their commitment to invest in cross-cultural music, it excited me. So that was one. Another one, totally different, is a global company called SHEIN or SHEIN or however you pronounce it. But it's pronounced SHEIN. This company was having a very bad reputation from a green agenda point of view, an eco agenda point of view. But when they approached me to help them to address green issues and address issues of climate change that impact the fast fashion industry, I felt it only right. I said, you're asking for help. I would love to help. And so despite all the negativity going on around them, I said, yes, I will try and do what I can to help them. And then a third one is really relating to, I suppose, Bible translation, which is to do with translating the Old Testament from the Hebrew to the heart language of people. Because I come from a very community that there are not many people who speak that language, Sindhi. And I know when I shared with my mother about the Bible, she said, help me. Can I have a copy in my heart language? I couldn't find any. So here is a group who were trying to translate into these languages. And I thought, no, I've got to help them. So I'm always responding to challenges, things that really need something met. And there's a range of them. So when I heard about 35 years ago that young Asian girls' attempted suicide rate was 4 times the national average, made me sit up and think. I have 6 sisters. I know a lot of my friends within families who are young Asian girls, and I could understand the tension. We move countries, we migrate, we go to a new country, we have one set of cultures that we come with. There's another set of culture to adopt to. Some families find it difficult, so they hold back, and they well, literally, we were getting into a ghetto. And again, I felt from that point of view, what can I do to make the wider community understand what is going on, and not just to write them off and say, oh, look, this is all not correct. How can we help bridge divides? So there's a whole range of things that I've been involved with over the last 30, 40 plus years, and driven. Actually, it happened, when I went on a business trip to India. It was my first trip. I'm born in Kenya, Mombasa. My family come from what became Pakistan, but what was British India. In 1947, it was partition. Mm-hmm. It became British India, and it became Pakistan. And so we were on the wrong side of the border. My family were Hindus. Pakistan became essentially a Muslim country because of the majority Muslims there. And they were dividing along religious grounds. We had to flee. Lost a palace in Hyderabad, Sindh in Pakistan. Now, fled to Kenya, where I was born. That was in 1947. We rebuilt, we left a palace. My grandfather and his brothers have made a fortune trading silk. My memoirs that I've just launched, My Silk Road. It begins from that journey of my grandfather and his brothers, going one brother to Japan, which is a great producer of silk. And then to one brother to South Africa, Cape Town and Johannesburg, and one brother, my grandfather, who was there in Johannesburg, and then another brother in Kenya. So I was born in Kenya. So 47-year partition, lose everything. You start your life again. The silk is still trading, silk making money. We're now in Kenya and in South Africa. we are still remaking our money now, having lost everything. And by 1967, 20 years later, the British colonies are getting independence. Kenya and East African countries are getting independence, and everyone is familiar with the Idi Amin, Uganda exodus of Asians, where overnight an entire community had to leave everything and arrive in the UK because all of us were in British colonies. So there was no choice. Even if we wanted to go to India, we couldn't. It had to be Britain. So 1967, I'm a 16-year-old, just turned 17, arrive in London with 15 of us, freezing cold. You refer to England, your home country, with freezing cold. It's January the 2nd, it's like minus whatever. You land in a country, it's strange. My first experience of so much cold. And I'm breathing and smoke is coming out of my mouth. And I know I'm not smoking. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? Everybody smokes. And we did what we do best. We are business people. My community, my family, we are traders. I say, if it moves, we sell it. We buy from one place, sell to another at a price that is a bit more, and make money. Trading. So we arrive now in London. We discover that what we can do is there is a corner shop. Corner shop is a mom and pop store. Cigarettes, sweets. It was easy to get into that. You didn't need a lot of money. 15 of us were only able to bring out at that time in 67 or 66, £200. Between 15 of us, maybe a bit more than, maybe 200, £250. So we bought this corner shop, which in 66, 67 was going for like 55, £150 or something, right? A lovely corner shop. It had 4 bedrooms. And in these 4 bedrooms, 15 of us could sleep. 1 toilet, 1 bathroom, joint. So can you imagine the pressure on those facilities, especially when you have 7 teenagers, 8 teenagers preparing for school? There's me, my sisters. I mean, it was manic. But we are traders. Within 2 years, from one shop, we had 6 shops. And suddenly we found ourselves, okay, I've got my own bedroom now, after 2 years, and we're doing that. And it went on from there. And one of the things I did, which I promised my father, we are traders, so the community at that time didn't hold a high value on education. The value was on making money, trading. Everybody was dying to get into business, fighting to get into business. All my brothers, our conversation at the lunch table, what deal did you do today? Dad would come back with the amazing deals he'd done. And it went on. It was just incredible. And I was listening and thinking, boy, I would love that. But then I was one who loved studying. I would, at the age of 12 or 13, retire into a room in the house with books like War and Peace, Les Miserables, those classics, because I loved reading. Even Just William, the classic teenage books at the time, which were in our library in Mombasa. And I would absorb them. So when I arrived in London, one of the things I was determined to do was to go to further education. And I could see at school they were saying I was, we landed, as I said, as refugees. So we landed in Shepherd's Bush, as I say jokingly, from one bush to another bush. There we were in Shepherd's Bush. Because of our economic circumstances, we were placed, we were put in an area, we found an area called Shepherd's Bush, which was near Wormwood Scrubs, a prison in Britain. And in that area, housing was cheap. We were put into a local school behind the prison. Half my classmates, if not more, had one parent in that prison. So it was quite an amazing, extraordinary setting to just come in from wealth and opulence to now surrounded in that community. But it didn't deter us. We were doing well in the corner shop. We knew how to trade. And I was determined to study. Just as in when I was born in Kenya, I would go into a room and read. Here, with 15 of us, I would still find my space at 4 in the morning to open up, read, study, late at night, read, study, and help run the shop, by the way. So this wasn't just you're studying so you can't. You've got to learn to fill the shelves and stand behind the counter and serve customers at 5 in the morning and all sorts. But I got my A levels. This is the sort of 17-year-old education, 18-year-old qualification levels that enable you to get to university if you pass. I passed, more than passed, even though I couldn't afford to go to university because we weren't qualifying for a grant from the government. Got a scholarship because of my good grades from Kenya, the O-level grades, all ones. They said, great, we'll give you a scholarship. You go to university. Which university do you go to? How do I know? Where do I go? So guess what? My brother said, you can only, we have all brothers running the shop now. You can only go to university. That's a 1 shilling right away, 5 penny right away. The basic, the minimum bus fare. So I took out a map and said, right, where does a 5 penny bus ride, a 1 shilling bus ride take me to? And I discovered there was a college near Shepherd's Bush. It was in High Street in South Kensington. It was called Imperial College, which I'd never heard about. But I thought, well, if that's the only one I can afford to go to with the 1 shilling bus ride, I will apply. And I did apply. Said, I do physics. Why? Don't ask me. I loved science. I loved maths. I loved chemistry. I mean, I loved studying. Anything I could have done, really. So I went for it and got my place, only to realize when I was there that, oh my goodness, where have I landed? This place is incredible. I mean, everybody there was like brain boxes. You know, you go there at 4 in the morning, lights are on, people are studying. At midnight, lights are on, people are studying. And then in the weekend, everyone's having lots of fun. So I'm here at university now, discovering all sorts of things, like attending a Saturday night concert with Santana and people, you know, groups like that. Queen, the group Queen, used to practice out near the physics department. In fact, one of our students, Brian May, was a student at Imperial College, along with others, and they would practice at the local pub and play at gigs at our college. It was great place to be at. But I was determined to study, work hard, and I got that scholarship, and I went on from there. But one thing very significant happened when I was there. What happened is, the first year I lived at home. I would go to college and come running back on the same number 49 bus for the shilling ride and be back home to help at the shop and study. And no fun at uni other than maybe Saturday night now and again, going out and enjoying a concert. But one thing I discovered is in the 3rd year of my 3-year course, I had to live at college. I couldn't continue just to go home and back. That's part of the deal at college, at university. You must live for 1 year there. So I was dreading it, and I left it till the final year. And in the final year, for the first time, I left our family of 15 and friends and relatives to go and stay the night for, you know, the forever, like in university. How do you make friends? These are different to me. You know, when they come to the shop, it's okay. You come, I'll serve you. I'm now in a different space with what I would say foreigners, others, people I don't really understand or know on a day-to-day basis. And I said, what do I do? I said, I'll go to a place called the pub. They used to talk about the pub at the shop. They never went. I said, this pub everyone talks about, let me go there. So I went to the pub. In the first day, second day, I thought, I'm lonely. I sit in the pub. And the first thing I noticed is it's the first week of college, university college, freshers week. Everybody's new, everybody's fresh, lots of things happening, concerts happening. And in the pub, a group of musicians are playing music. They're called the Forerunners. And I'm thinking, interesting. And I'm having my beer, half pint. That's all I could afford. That's to last me the evening. And I said, I'll keep that. And then they were playing music. So I turned around to listen. And suddenly there's a song I recognized. Put your hands in the hands of the man from Galilee. I was hearing it on the radio waves. I said, hey, they're singing this song. And then when it finished, they said, about the song, they said, and this man from Galilee is Jesus. I think, they're talking crazy. So at the end, you have to fill a form saying, come and have a further discussion on what you heard. I said, come and have an argument with me. I don't agree with what you said. And cut a long story short, somebody did visit me, and boy, did I have an argument. I said, this Jesus is not from Galilee. What's this stuff you're spreading? I'm brought up to believe this man came from London. He came from the city of London. He wore a pinstripe suit, a bowler hat, and blue-eyed and blonde. And don't give us all that stuff about man from Galilee being Jesus. So the guy took me through a few passages of the Bible, Good News for Modern Man. And when I read it with him, I thought, not so sure. And when he left me, after a week, he couldn't argue with me. You know, I mean, I'm a physicist. I come from a Hindu family, brought up in the Sikh faith. for 15 years, I was educated in a Muslim school for 10 years, from the age of 5 to the age of 16, 11 years, educated in a Muslim school. So you get assembly in the morning, you hear the Quran every day, you're singing their songs, you're learning about their imams and everything else. So here I am now contending with Jesus. So that argument, well, in the end, they obviously won the argument, because I said I will be a follower of Jesus. I said I will not call myself a Christian, but I will read the Bible, I will follow this man and his teachings and do my best to emulate him. And that's what's driven me for my life, really. I learned the power of prayer, and which people can call meditation, quiet contemplation, reflection. All those are good. I learned it because I would do that anyway, even as a Hindu. Meditation is very strong. And I brought up with prayer and meditation. In Islam as well, there's prayer and all that. So here I was, they were saying about, I learned about Jesus, and I said, he's an amazing man. He did all this, went away for 40 days, prayed and fasted and stuff like that. And that has been my driver. It's in my DNA. It was like 40, 50 years ago now, nearly. 67. So yeah, you can work out what that makes it. 67 we arrived, 71, 72, 71 December. So there I am, learning from this man himself. And that has driven me. So when it came to business, for example, running a corner shop, when I became a follower of Jesus, and then my elder brother followed as well, and my mom, because I learned how to express my faith in our language and culture. Very important, calling Jesus, who I met in that pub, now my Sanatan Satguru, my eternal, true, and living master. My mom loved that. She chimed with that. My brothers. Now, you become believers, you learn about values, and I'm not saying values were wrong in all cultures, but I know we as Hindus, we were quite content not to worry about buying goods that fell off a lorry. Goods that fall off a lorry, the guy would come to you, the driver said, I got a box of these chocolates, very, very cheap, and I said, oh yeah, where'd you get them from? I've got my stock here. He said, oh, don't worry, mate. It's, just a tenner. That was 25 quid. This is 10 quid. I said, all right, where'd you get it from? He said, so. And then he used an expression I didn't understand. He said, they fell off the back of a lorry. I believed him. I said, oh gosh. So when they fall off the back of a lorry, you can actually buy them so cheap. Wow, I'll take more of that next time. And then I learned, when I became a follower of Jesus and tried to, follow his values and ways, hey, that's actually not correct. What has happened is it belongs to somebody else. You're paying for something which is not a good value. Stop buying that stuff. But the most serious thing I'll tell you was this. In the shop, we discovered our best sellers were pornographic books, magazines. And they were on the top shelf, what I call the top shelf. So they were making a fortune for us. I mean, the local police force will be our first customers. We said we can only release it tomorrow. It's a special for us Wednesday night, and then Thursday weekend you can give to others to sell. So we were selling this stuff until young family, parents with young children complained. They said, look, they can see what's up there. This isn't right. And now, of course, I'm following Jesus and I'm reading the Bible and saying, and then the local church elders came and said, please, can you remove those books? They're not good to sell. And I looked at the values I was now trying to espouse and follow. So when I was convinced this was wrong, with my brother, my elder brother was the one who led this, we got rid of the lot. They were making enough money as everything else in the shop. So that half our income is now going. But it was amazing. Our eyes are open to another community of business students. They were there buying sandwiches and all sorts of snacks. And we thought, if we start making fresh sandwiches at home and sell them, how would that do? And in those days, there were no laws or food standards agency or people controlling how you do stuff at kitchens at home. This was in the 60s and 70s. Today, you couldn't do it. So we started making sandwiches, different kinds. They sold, excuse the pun, but like hotcakes, they just went. And we were making even more money from that food stuff than we did from our other corner shop stuff. So it was just amazing how all that impacted me. And that really was the seeds and the beginnings of the journey. So when I went to India on a business trip, that was in 71, 72, 76. Now, I've now joined a bank in the city after university qualification, discovered glass doors and glass ceilings, discovered I cannot progress well in this company. It's too restrictive. What do? When I get married, and the story of how I got married is in my memoirs, and those who are interested, it's My Silk Road, The Adventures and Struggles of a British Asian Refugee, published by Pippa Rand Books and available on Amazon as well. I went on a business trip to India because by now the business was growing. I joined this business of my wife's uncle. He invited me to join the business in Geneva. I was working for a bank in London, international bank. I got the job, glass doors and glass ceilings. My wife's uncle said, "You're in banking. I'm just switching over business from London to Geneva. This is a family business. They started very small. They were now trading maybe in the 70s, like $3 or $4 million of. We are traders, as I said. They did it big scale. We were selling sweets and chocolates. They were selling sugar and rice in hundreds of tons, frozen chicken, shipping it to Nigeria. So they said, we started this business, it's doing very well. Nigeria is booming with its oil economy. It's really growing. We're moving to Geneva, where there are amazing financing opportunities. Would you join us?" So it was a startup. I went to Geneva. Can I tell you, within 8 years, we were turning over $200 million. Suddenly investing in industries, vineyards, farms, buying, I remember from Australia, frozen meat for the Nigerian market, and all sorts from China, huge business, $200 million, 7,000 employees in 15 countries. It was like, and I was the UK Group Chief Executive, Group Vice Chairman, and literally helping run with two others a business that was just so exciting. But when we then bought these fish businesses in Scotland, because the family said, we're making money from African countries, from India, we need quality earnings from first world economies. So can we do something in Britain? Because now I'm competing with the Brits, we have the foreigners, the immigrants, how do we do it? So we bought a factory in Scotland doing smoked salmon, crab, scampi, knew nothing about it, but we are traders, we learn fast. Bought it, brought the person to run it. Within 2 years, from like 200 people, we were 600 people. I was sent to Scotland to go and run it, and I realized there's a scarcity of fish there during the winter. They're just shutting the shops. All these women, mums, daughters, granddaughters, working together in teams, peeling prawns and scampis and all that kind of thing. No, they're laid off. I said, apart from the fact that they're laid off, we have got an asset that's not been used for 3 months. This is rubbish. My granny told me there's fish in India. So I went to India. First time in my life as an adult, I went to India to buy prawns, to buy seafoods. And I went on a 10-day crazy trip along every port in India where I could see there was fish, smelling of fish at the end of the day. But I thought, great. On the return journey, I'm here in my first class flight, Air France, going back to London, to Scotland, where we were now living for the year. On the last night, I visited the biggest slum in Asia, the Honorary. That is where Slumdog Millionaire was shot. If people know the film Slumdog, I was there in 87, years before the film was shot. And that visit hit me. Here I was, a follower of Jesus. Here I was, someone who attended church, did my tithing, even became an elder at the local church, all that kind of stuff. I'm now witnessing poverty firsthand, because otherwise I'm blind to it. In Kenya, it might have been around me, but we were immunized. We were in our own world. Now I was in that world because I asked local community workers. One thing I did as a business person, I said, whatever business we do, whoever we buy and sell from, what do they do for the local community? I want to know. And I want to deal with companies that are doing good, because that is important. I want a clear conscience that I'm not exploiting labor and all that kind of thing. So I said to them, can you show me what you guys are doing in your local community to these fish businesses? So that one of them was very brave. They took me to the slum. They said, look, here's community workers. We support them. They'll take you to the largest slum in Asia. You tell us what we do. So I went around and, oh, man, it blew my mind. First, you drive in. And I said, I want to go in a rickshaw, not in a taxi. I want to do it with, with all the windows, the rickshaw, the tuk-tuk, that. I said, I want to go there because I don't want to go in a Merc or any big fancy taxi that will get the interest, that'll have an undesirable reaction from people. So I went in this tuk-tuk. First thing I saw, a street full of cardboard boxes. And I said, people living there? They said, yeah, that's their homes. I said, oh. They then took me around to, let's stop here. I got down and I saw a little kid of maybe 5 years old. I had a son at home of 5. I said, hey, what's he doing in that pipe? They said, that's his home. I said, a big water pipe. They said, yeah. I said, but why can't he stay in that cardboard box? At least he's got shelter all around and other people. They said, he can't afford to pay the slumlord. I said, I was shocked. I said, all right, slumlord? I've never heard that before. Then I said, where's his dad? They laughed. I said, oh, all right, wrong question. Where's his mum? I said, come round the corner, we'll show you. And they took me down. And in the cages, I saw these young girls. Maybe they just hit puberty. Hey, it was just awful. And for a man to, I could imagine what they may be going through all night. I just said, oh, I can't cope with this. Take me back. They took me to the airport. My flight was 10 o'clock. I got in, Air France. They said, go to the left, first class, caviar, champagne. I said, I can't take anything. I'm just going to sit. I waited. I couldn't eat all the amazing French food they offer you. Midnight, lights off, and I just broke down. And to cut a long story short, so I wrote my memoirs for my grandchildren and for others to read. I shared with my wife what had happened. And she said, for the first time, both of us agreed, let's do something different with our lives. I was 37. I said, we've been making for the last 8 years bonuses that we can't even spend the interest of at that time. What are we going to do? Do we need all that? What do you need? What do you want? I was reading a book, The Mustard Seed Conspiracy by Tom Sine, S-I-N-E. This was in 70s. And I came back, and his simple point was, if you can make £1 of a difference and 1 million people make £1 of a difference, that's £1 billion. As a businessman, I loved it. I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I know what you're talking about. So I came back, started a charity project with a friend. That project within 7 years raised £5 million using an entrepreneurial idea. Eat less, pay more. He'd run a simple, small restaurant in Kent, literally for 1 month before Christmas, which is high spend, high street, high guilt, serving developing world, third world food. We call it third world food, but it's developing world food at posh Western prices, baked beans on toast, whatever you call it, doing all that. And I'm not kidding. He'd raised £5,000 in that one project. I said, hey, let's do 200 of these and raise £1 million business, but now for good. The BBC invited me. They said, Mr. Gidoomal, you've never done this kind of thing before. You think you're going to raise £1 billion? I said, look, if I aim for £1 million and hit a half, it's better than aiming for 0 and hitting 100 of 0. They couldn't argue. And in the event, we raised £500,000. And over 7 years, it was just incredible to see £5 million. But more than that, 50,000 teenagers inspired and mobilized to do something for those who are less well off than themselves. 50,000 teenagers getting excited about all this. And the condition for running it, a 1-week training course in business. How do you open a bank account? How do you count your money? How do you send it to the center so that it goes to where it should go to? And number 2, what did Jesus teach about poverty? We want you to learn what his teachings are on poverty. And just simple teachings. Why you should care for the poor. What is it that is important about caring for those who are marginalized, disadvantaged, and don't have the privileges we have? And that was the most satisfying part of the project. The millions can be made. Transforming people's lives, and especially teenagers, that is huge. What delighted me once, meeting a member of parliament in Britain, he made a way for me. He said, I've heard you were one of the founders of Christmas Cracker. That was the project, Christmas Cracker. I said, yes, I was. He said, I'm here because I ran one of those projects as a teenager. Then I met journalists, and I met so many people many years later, and I see transformed lives, and that is so satisfying, so exciting to see, which is why I say you can come from any background, do whatever you have done in your past. Make sure you do never forget those who are less well off, who are marginalized and excluded. That is so, so important. That's one of the basic teachings that Jesus said, care for the poor. So that really is an exciting and important bit. And so in terms of what's keeping me busy now, I said, SHEIN, why did I agree to join SHEIN despite all the advice saying, be careful, there's a lot of negative publicity. I said, they've asked for help. If they can be helped, look at the size of this company. It's a multi-billion-pound company, and I'm having the privilege of working with them, and they are keen to make that difference. I think it's important we support them. To me, that's exciting. Developing cross-cultural music. That's what I believe has touched me as I have learned to integrate, to work cross-culturally. So if that can be done and people are putting money into helping that, it's building relationships, building communities, strengthening communities, and not creating ghettos and segregations and apartheid and all that kind of thing. So it's so important. So stuff that I do now, justice, making sure that there is justice for those young girls and that they don't get ignored, and that things are done to raise the issues so the parents can understand this is what they're doing to our young girls and boys, by the way. The statistic goes both ways now in Britain. It was 4 times the national average. It's 2 times the national average attempted suicide rates amongst young Asian boys and girls. Boys twice, girls 4 times. They suffer more. I saw the disadvantage that my sister suffered. I was a boy. I was king. I had all the privilege. So all that kind of things. And, to top it all, I even ran for mayor of London. Can you believe it? In the very first election for mayor of London in the year 2000, when I saw the injustice within London. A kid born in Westminster has an average life of, at that time it was 7 years more than a kid born in East London, just 5 miles away. Come on, something's wrong. Right, throw my hat in the ring. I'm going to fight for mayor of London, and I'm going to try and make a difference. And some of the ideas are crazy, but you know what? It's actually helped, because at that time in 2000, I said, I'm going to raise £500 million to help projects in East London. So of course, all the other candidates, this guy's a joker, I said, look, I have an idea. And I actually put it in my manifesto when the election was over. And it was somebody else's idea, not mine. But I saw that being used. And I said, if he can do it, let me put it in the manifesto with his permission. He then comes to me, a guy called Michael Schluter. He's from South Africa, very popular with Australian politicians and, in fact, global politicians. And so I saw his idea. I said, can I put it in my manifesto? Yes, I did the mayoral race. When it was over, he came to me and said, Ram, you put that idea. You obviously believed it. I said, absolutely. He said, could you be the chairman of the project and try and deliver on that? I said, look, it would lack integrity if I said no. I'm someone, if I've done it, I've got to take the idea and now put it in. He'd done it in Sheffield, North England. He'd done it in Newcastle, again, North England. I said, let's do it in East London. So we said, let's do a pilot. And we said, let's make our goal £5 million. And if that works, we'll then go for the 500 million. We did it. We raised like 2 million. It disappointed a lot of people. But for me, it was, I said, hey, there's a seed being planted here in 2000. Well, when I retired, in 2024, couple of years, no, 2023, we had done £1 billion. And literally, it was accelerating so much that today it's approaching £2 billion. So that same one idea delivered and is delivering and is today doing a whole lot of stuff. So for me, it was very exciting. But it's that kind of thing, running for political office taught me a lot. So I have another book, by the way, which if your viewers want, I can send free to them. It's an ebook. It's called How Would Jesus Vote? How Would Jesus Vote? And it's an ebook, very easy to read. And it's based on my experience of running for mayor in London in 2000. And by the way, I got 100,000 votes. I technically got a seat in the London Assembly, and I saved my deposit, which shocked everybody. Even Parliament was talking about it. In my book, in my memoirs, there's a chapter, Who is this man? that was the question they were asking in Parliament. Who is this man, a refugee who's come and running this race and suddenly getting 100,000 votes and shocking the political system? So, and then the other book, which was based on the experience of the young Asian girls committing suicide. My very first book, by the way, I have a motto, I was told, publish or perish. And my very first book, Sari and Chips, that is also an ebook. And I'm more than happy to send it free to anyone who wants it. I can send it to you both, and you can then forward it on to your listeners or viewers. Sari and Chips, my gift. And How Would Jesus Vote? My gift. My Silk Road cannot be a gift because it's brand new and the publisher owns the rights. So I have to wait for it to do well, and then maybe, who knows. But that's coming out as an audiobook at some point, and I'm hoping it happens in the next week or two. But there we are. That's a sort of, in a nutshell, a recap of a journey that began from what became Pakistan, British India at 47, to East Africa 67, to Britain. To East Africa at 47, to Britain at 67, and onwards in between Geneva, France, Switzerland, London, Scotland. Even I stayed for a year and came back. So that's the journey in a nutshell.
Lovely. Thank you, Ram. Thank you so much. I must admit, I'm afraid we've run out of time.
I know we have.
I wasn't able to, and my dog is sadly going crazy in the background. I didn't get a chance to ask any questions. But for the viewers who normally we'd go into all different parts of business ethics and the stuff you've been up to in terms of questions and answers. But it's lovely to hear your backstory as well. And so thank you so much for joining. I'll put your links in the description below this, and so anyone can access that, and anything that you would like to distribute, obviously I can include in the description links as well. And then people can find out more about you from there onwards, and get your new book when it comes out. So thanks for joining. I really appreciate it.